Dowling here, Mitch Kurtz here. Thanks for joining us for another episode of the AltMed podcast. And if you like what we're doing, please like and subscribe. We have way more content coming out and it's all fantastic. Please. Please.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the AltMed podcast. My name is Andrew Dowling. I've got my co-host Mitch Kurtz in the house tonight.
Howdy.
Or in his apartment, actually, to be a little bit more correct about the situation. And we have a very special guest with us today. He is our friend, one of our favorite dispensing pharmacists in all of Melbourne, and a guy who knows a thing or two about dispensing medicinal cannabis and a lot of other things. So he's come to share his wisdom with us today. It is none other than Arash Taji from Amcal in Prahran. Arash, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Mitch. Thanks for having me on.
Pleasure.
Great to have you with us. It's I know we've probably heard your name going back a little while now. So I think you must have been one of the early pharmacists that was really starting to make a name around the medicinal cannabis space. It is a little bit of a niche area. Perhaps we might kick off with just a run through of your background and how you got into your current position.
Yeah, so I've been a pharmacist for about 15 years, studied in Adelaide, got my degree there, did my internship there, and then very shortly after that, I moved across to Melbourne. Obviously been practicing as a pharmacist since that time, for the most part at Prahran Amcal Pharmacy. And so more or less for the first 10 years, 10, 11, 12 years, it was traditional pharmacy work we were doing. And it was probably around 2019 where we started seeing the first scripts for medicinal cannabis coming through. And since then, it's obviously grown and we've, evolved with the industry. It looks a lot different it looks a lot different today to what it was, back in 2019 when we, as I was saying, we started dispensing some medicinal cannabis scripts. And so here we are, early 2023, and things couldn't have looked any more different.
It is crazy to think about the just the landscape of a pharmacy. I don't think a lot of people even 5 years ago could have really envisaged that you'd go to a pharmacy to pick up medical cannabis, dried flower, that type of product. But of course we know that a lot of people have really taken to it. And in the interest of balance, as we always do on this show, we mention as well that there are some people who medical cannabis doesn't work for, and that's why you should always just speak to your doctor about it. But yeah, what have you kind of noticed about, I guess because I'm thinking back in 2019, there probably weren't that many products available back then. And what is the product mix? How has that changed over time? And are you working with quite a few products now as compared to 2019?
Yeah, so back when we started dispensing medicinal cannabis in 2019, it was a lot more simpler, only because the volume was a lot less and the number of products that were available back then was a fraction of the number of products available now. There was literally probably a handful of oils that we would see that would present to us in the pharmacy. But that was probably a good thing because it's allowed us to, as I was saying before, evolve and develop, our skills, through the last 3 or so years. So there was probably a couple of key players in the early days with what was available in terms of products, and very quickly after that, feels like every week there was a new product that would be added onto the market, new dosing form, whether it was an oral capsule or a dry herb flower, that all sort of progressively came along. So it's been the fastest growing aspect in community pharmacy from what we've seen by a long stretch.
Are there any?
Yeah, that's crazy though. Sorry, just picking up on that point around, just this idea of pre-medical cannabis, all these people out there that clearly had a desire to at least be treated with as an alternative to whatever they may have been getting treated with. I mean, it really is. That kind of confirmed, at least in your mind, that the numbers that we're seeing, did it actually surprise you, just the sheer volume of patients? Did you sort of think, oh, it's going to slow down now, and it's just kind of kept going?
So I never thought it would slow down, but I don't think anyone would have, well, maybe some people would have, but I don't think many people would have predicted, how fast the growth has been and how accessible medicinal cannabis is to patients. But just the products aside, the willingness, I guess, for new doctors to come on board to prescribe medicinal cannabis, that's grown exponentially as well, throughout the last few years. So, it's not just an increase in products, it's an increase in doctors, increase in pharmacies that are now specializing in it, which is great, because the demand's there. And, if it wasn't for these doctors and pharmacies specializing in this new health sector, there would have been a big constraint in supply for patients to access these medications.
When you talk about that growth, like how much exactly growth? I imagine back in 2009 it would have been like maybe, I don't know, 1 or 2 scripts 2019, 1 or 2 scripts a week or something like that, and now it's what, like I'd imagine hundreds potentially a day. What kind of trajectory are we looking at there in terms of that appetite of the doctors and patients?
Yeah. So, I mean, I can only speak to what I've seen. What I see is not what is happening. I don't see what's happening in every single pharmacy and every single clinic. But yeah, spot on, Mitch. We were, it probably started off a couple of scripts a week through, maybe 1 or 2 doctors that we formed a relationship with. The doctors wanted to know that they can send their patients to us because, we were educated in the medicinal cannabis space, and we knew how to order the products in, because, back in 2019, if a patient was to present to their local pharmacy with a script for this oil they've been prescribed, it definitely wouldn't be evident to the pharmacy, where they could even order this product in, because you don't access these products through your traditional wholesalers, where you get all your other, where you purchase all your other prescription medications from. So I think there was a big hurdle for patients, So let's say the patient, great, they've seen the doctor, they've obtained their prescription, great. And then often there was the problem with, receiving the supply of the oil. And so that's why these, so that's why the doctors really wanted to, I guess, have an anchor pharmacy where they can just, send their patients across, and, there's no delay or interruption in, for the patient to start their treatment or continue their treatment. So it was definitely a bit of a convoluted process if you didn't have the know-how as to where to access these products from a pharmacy standpoint.
Yeah, and I think that's something that still resonates with a lot of patients these days. I know even ourselves, having experience with going to a pharmacy and the pharmacists, just a random pharmacy, not having a single clue, or even saying, no, we can't do this. Like it's either not understanding the legality or not understanding how to do it. It seems to be still something we see with both doctors, but also pharmacies, just not fully grasping the mechanism to actually, or the processes in place to be able to order and dispense or order and prescribe and these kinds of things. I imagine you've already been through that learning curve. Well, obviously you have been through that learning curve. How much more convoluted is it compared to, your standard, I don't know, amoxicillin script, let's say?
So for us, it isn't convoluted because we have our suppliers. We know exactly where to get each product from. But so it's probably not fair for me to answer it from my point of view, but rather than your average pharmacy's perspective, it still can be convoluted. And I speak to other pharmacists. I'm on some pharmacist Facebook groups. They often post a prescription they've received for a particular medicinal cannabis product, and they ask the pharmacist community, "Hey guys, any ideas where I can purchase or order this medication from?" And I look at it and I straight away know where to access it from. But there's still the education still isn't there for a lot of pharmacies, partially because they haven't been, I guess, presented with enough prescriptions to be well versed in where to access the products from. But it can still be a barrier for patients if they go to a pharmacy that just isn't experienced in it. Because at the end of the day, any pharmacy can purchase the products. There's no issue there, but I guess you have to know where to get it from, and then not just that, what documents you need to submit to that wholesale or distributor to then receive the product. And I think the education still isn't, it's still not there for a good portion of healthcare professionals.
Is it possible to walk us through it? Is it the same as other medications, or in terms of what you need to supply? I guess there's drug receipts and all that kind of stuff. Can you walk us a little bit through the process of how it works? A lot of people don't really understand what goes on behind that plastic veil in front of the plastic barrier on top of the desk.
So if you know what you're doing, as I was saying, it's not convoluted and it's easy enough. But essentially, you need the bare bones of it is you need two things. You need a prescription and you need a approval, because all of these medicinal cannabis products, they're not approved products by the TGA. So hence you need either a SASB approval, a special access scheme type B approval typically, or a authorized prescriber letter to show that this patient is approved to receive whatever medicinal cannabis product has been prescribed. So once, from the pharmacy side of things, once you know where to order it from, you submit the you order what product you want, and you submit the AP letter or the SASB form, which I was talking about before. And then that's all the distributor needs, right? And then they can dispatch the order. Typically it will take 1 to 2 days for it to arrive to the pharmacy. And from that point on, it's like any other medication the pharmacist would be dispensing for a Scheduled 8 medication.
And just on that, is the
THC.
What's that, Mitch?
Well, that would be for THC, right? For CBD, let's say, it might be.
Correct. So for the CBD products, you still need the approval letter.
Yeah.
SASB, because again, it's still not an approved product as far as the TGA is concerned. So from the ordering aspect, it doesn't matter if it's THC or the CBD isolate. But then from the dispensing side of things, from the supply side of things, it is a little bit different whether it's a S4 or a S8. You know, S4s don't need to be recorded in a drug register. S8s do. So there is that extra step for the pharmacist to do, you know, with the THC containing products.
Do you think the products should be Schedule 8? Like, just when you think about in your pharmacy, you know, some of the other Schedule 8 substances that you would dispense are, you know, basically drugs that people could become addicted to, and, you know, yet all Schedule 8 substances in Victoria get grouped under this banner of drugs of dependence. Don't want to, you know, take you into any controversy here, Arash, but please just tell us exactly how you feel. Do you think that cannabis as dried flower should be treated as a drug of dependence, or what's your view on that?
So, look, it is a bit, I don't think it deserves to be in the same schedule as all the other Scheduled 8 medications, you know, with your, you know, your amphetamine based drugs, your opioid based drugs. They obviously have a much higher
Harm profile and
a much higher chance of abuse.
Yeah.
A lot easier to become dependent to the medications. It's a lot more toxic you know, if you take a high dose of it.
Yeah.
They can, without a doubt, definitely be a lot more, you know, dangerous. So there's that. But unfortunately, the way the schedule, the way the TGA scheduled medicinal cannabis is, it is a Scheduled 8. Now, maybe they need to create a new schedule for medicinal cannabis where it doesn't have the same scrutiny of all your other traditional Scheduled 8 medications for the reasons I was just explaining. So, look, whether it should be the same schedule, like whether it should be a Scheduled 4 or a new type of schedule, I'm not sure what the right answer is there, but I don't think it should be, or it doesn't deserve to be, you know, scrutinized in the same way as, you know, all the traditional Scheduled 8 medications.
Ketamine or something like that. I think that Schedule 4 feels like it is appropriate to me. I mean, they're looking at putting CBD in Schedule 3, which also it is, if in the right circumstances. That feels appropriate. I think from the harm profile and even the intoxication profile on the CBD, you could easily support. I don't know. I'd actually like to ask you, as a pharmacist, you know, do you feel it like CBD deserves to be in Schedule 3, and could you see THC fitting in Schedule 4?
Well, I think CBD actually can be S3. There's just no products approved for sale for S3.
Correct.
Because anything that is S3 needs to have a special type of evidence-based study behind it. So, and I think that's why we haven't seen, you know, any products come to market yet, because it just doesn't satisfy the criteria of the TGA to make it a S3. So CBD definitely, you know, and I reckon one day we will see CBD products Scheduled 3, because look, they're very harmless type of products. You don't get intoxicated on a very, very little interactions you have to be concerned about as a doctor or as a pharmacist prescribing or supplying it. But yeah, look, I mean, I wouldn't be against the other types of medicinal cannabis being Scheduled 4, but I guess because it is a new, you know, in the scheme of things, it's still in recent times it's been legalized for medicinal use. I think we're taking baby steps towards the future where, you know, hopefully we'll see less and less regulation.
Yeah, I agree. I personally, I don't think it should be Schedule 8 for my 2 cents. I just, when I look at the other substances in that class or of schedule, it just feels totally overkill. And like, for example, unless your product is 98% or more CBDs, then it can be a Schedule 4. I mean, you have a situation where someone could bring to market a high, a mixed oil that is, 1-to-1 CBD, CBG, and that would be treated as a Schedule 8, and wouldn't even cause any intoxication. So it's the whole thing, I think, is just hasn't been conceived very well.
I think the whole Scheduled 8 wasn't made with medicinal cannabis in mind.
Yeah, exactly.
It just wasn't.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, it's based off drugs of dependence, right? Would you call it a drug of dependence in your professional view?
Well, that's what I was just asking before.
So not to the same affinity. So nowhere near to the same affinity as all the other Scheduled 8 medications. It is possible to be addicted to THC. But the potential for that is just on multiple levels below, your opioids and your amphetamine-based medications. So, yeah. I mean, it's wrong to say there's zero potential for dependence for medicinal cannabis, but that's not the only, I guess, factor or criteria which determines whether a product should be Scheduled 8. We've got lots of Scheduled 4 medications on the market which have got a much higher potential for addiction than medicinal cannabis. That's the only metric the TGA looks at.
Okay. Now, question about, just in terms of a topic that's come up on AltMed before, is, I guess, the reluctance in some quarters of the medical establishment to really get on board with embracing medicinal cannabis, largely due to ideological reasons, and possibly because they have close ties to certain other medicine manufacturers. But I'm just curious, from your perspective, do you feel as a pharmacist that in your case, the Victorian Pharmacy Authority and maybe just broadly across Australia, have pharmacists embraced medicinal cannabis and had that kind of level of support in terms of training and getting to know the products? Or is it a bit more of a do it yourself, figure things out along the way?
So the pharmacies that specialize in it obviously have embraced it, and they've trained themselves up and they've educated themselves on the products and what it's prescribed for, the effects, the possible interactions, what patients need to be aware of, and advising patients of how to, for instance, up titrate the doses of the oils. So I guess that's for sure been embraced amongst a portion of pharmacists and pharmacies, but we're not there yet. There's I can't put a number on it, but I would say more than 50% of pharmacies still just aren't probably well equipped enough, and just haven't had that enough exposure to learn about medicinal cannabis, to know about the benefits of it.
Yeah.
And that's not just pharmacists, actually. It's prescribers as well. The prescribers that don't prescribe, I guess, it can still be, there is a bit of a, stereotype towards medicinal cannabis, where, I've seen and heard of some doctors, they, relate it to methadone for for people on the opioid substitution program. They think it's akin to, the opioid substitution program, which, it just, again, so whether you're a pharmacist or a doctor, I think there's still a good portion of the industry in the healthcare sector where the education just hasn't trickled all the way through.
Yeah. And I don't want to play into the stereotypes, but I have to say, for anyone who might have gone to collect some dried flower, I mean, if you get it from your community pharmacy, just grab a bag of jelly beans on the way out. It's a good combination. Your local pharmacy's got everything you need.
I'm just curious if are there any other medicines that you deal with that come in anything similar form to kind of flower, dried herb that cannabis does?
No. It's a unique. It's a unique medication. The closest thing would be, I guess, nicotine pods or nicotine vaping products. And then, but no pharmacy would be seeing anything remotely close or dispensing anything remotely close to a dry herb.
None of that dry herb natural nicotine product I've heard of. It's called cigarettes or something like that. I don't think
you can't buy that for pharmacies though.
Very good. Well, no, I wanted to ask actually just something we were touching on before we jumped on. You hail from Adelaide. We know Adelaide's got some quirky laws, particularly, quirky people too. No disrespect to any of our South Australian listeners.
Or guests.
Or guests, exactly. A couple of weirdos in Melbourne too. But yeah, in terms of the laws over there, so my understanding is that there was some degree of leniency for personal possession in South Australia that still exists to this day. What do you recall? Not that you were ever the target of a police sting or anything, but what are your recollections?
So I'm just going back to when I was living there. So this is obviously before medicinal cannabis was legalized. South Australia was, well, in a way, it was decriminalized to have personal possession of cannabis. So if you got caught with cannabis in South Australia, it was treated quite a bit different to you being caught in any other state. It would be obviously depending on how much you were caught with, but if it was deemed to be just for personal use and not for trafficking, it would just be nothing more than an expiation notice, so equivalent to getting a parking fine, really.
Yeah.
But definitely some other states have and had a much harsher approach where it would be a conviction and you'd have to go to through the court system and sort of see how you go from there. So it's and I think at some point actually you could even grow maybe a plant for personal use. I think that was allowed quite some time ago, maybe in the 80s and 90s. I'm not sure, but from what I recall, that was banned during the 2000s, but I'd have to double check that.
That's interesting. I'm looking at the Expiation of Offences Act 1996 while we're talking, and it looks as though it's a $250 fine for a sort of in lieu of having to go to court or anything, for possession up to 25 grams, and then 26 through to 100 grams is a $400 fine. So I guess for anyone living in South Australia, they're sort of contemplating those numbers and probably thinking, yeah, what's an extra $150? But no, that's very interesting. And of course, we've seen ACT allow home grow. So and really, I think it's a great model for every other part of Australia because, from what I gather, a lot of people, believe it or not, even though when given the opportunity to grow their own, will still choose not to because, they would rather have it, if they can afford to access it, through medical and legal means, they will, they'll have somebody else grow it for them. But I think it's just good for people to have that option.
And they've got more choice in what can be prescribed if they actually do go through the practitioner. It's if you're growing it, then you might just only be growing. Well, you'll be only growing one type of flower, right? That's often not the whole solution for
Yes.
a particular patient. So often you need a combination, whether it's a sativa, indica. So yeah, just because you can grow it, it might not be the best way.
Yeah, exactly. And to sort of expect that people would have necessarily, even the ability to just watch a few YouTube videos and suddenly become an expert with cultivation. And
it might not produce a yield, and then you don't have any, and then you're going to have to, if you want to access it legally, you're going to have to go through your doctor anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm not sure how useful that would be, but I guess it's we'll see.
Yeah, well, I think it's up to 4 plants per house or something. So I've wondered, because you have old Parliament House, new Parliament House, maybe 4 plants at each of those, just in view of everyone. Mitch knows my views on this. I am very pro legalization,
pro Parliament House growing on behalf of people.
Absolutely. And yeah, I think it would make question time a lot more peaceful and courteous. But well, I think we know you're a very busy man, Arash, so we'll let you go, and just want to say thank you so much for coming on and giving us a bit of insight around how pharmacists see this product and your experiences with it. So thank you so much for sharing all of that.
No, my pleasure. It's great to be on be on your podcast. I'm a bit of a listener to podcasts.
I knew there was one.
You should listen to the episode that we've done with you. You might learn a thing or two.
I don't know if I want to listen to mine.
That's actually the reason I don't listen back to our episodes. I'm like, I don't want to hear my voice. Anyway, don't mind me.
I listen to it 3 times every time for everyone.
You want to get the streams up, don't you, Mitch?
Exactly. I need to let people know that 5th stream was actually me 3 times after the first 2, which was my mum and my dad.
No, awesome. All right. Well, we'll look forward to catching up soon, Arash, and until then, take care.
Thanks, mate. Cheers.
It's Andrew Dowling here and Mitch Kurtz. Thanks for joining us for another episode of the AltMed podcast. Make sure to hit like and subscribe because we have way more content coming out. And you got to stay up to date with it. It was good until you did that. Okay. Sorry.